Today's guest has been playing at the intersection of brand, tech, and innovation long before AI became the buzzword of the decade and of today. Saren Sakurai is a creative strategist, product leader, and advisor with a rare blend of left brain clarity and right brain logic. He's helped early startups find their voice, guided SaaS companies through product and pivots, and built go to market strategies that actually connect. But here's the part that most people don't know. Before all this, Saren spent over a decade architecting award winning integrated campaigns for Fortune 100 companies like Kraft, Coca Cola, Sony Pictures, and Cisco. His teams launched Sprite's digital presence, reimagined Miracle Whip's brand experience, and built everything from immersive websites and social activations to gamified apps, online contestants, and digital venue takeovers. There's an endless of interesting experience that our guest has today. Now, he's applying that same creative firepower to AI, not just as a tool, but as a mindset. He helps companies rethink how they build, communicate, and grow in a world where human thinking and machine intelligence are colliding fast. So, if you're trying to figure out how to stay relevant, differentiated, and actually strategic in this new AI era, this episode is a masterclass. Let's get into it. So, Saren, thank you for joining us in the podcast.
No, thank you very much, Charlene. That was a great introduction.
Yeah. So, very as I mentioned to you, this is such an interesting podcast. I've been looking forward to having you on because you have such an interesting background. One of the things that you mentioned to me was your story, right? I asked you prior to this call, what is something that people usually miss when they tend to interview you? And you mentioned to me that you actually have a liberal arts background. So, what is it? How did you get started in this whole journey? Because from that, having that background, what was the transition? Or what was the story behind that really got you in this space right now?
My father was a teacher, and he
Mhm.
taught liberal arts at a great book school here in the US. And I think he just sort of raised me to try to be as diverse as I could possibly be. I developed the ability to sort of talk either in front of people or negotiate amongst them. And my best friend in high school said, "You should go into marketing. I think that's your future." And of course,
Mhm.
I was a fan of a lot of different marketing, and Nike being one. And essentially, I spent 2 years in Japan after graduating from college. Came back. My parents had moved to Portland, Oregon, and I set about trying to get a job at Nike. And it took, a few months, but I managed to get in the door, and I spent about a year there right around the Sydney Olympics, and it was incredibly inspiring. Uh, they
Mhm.
they had the best and the brightest in all of the agencies across all of the different platforms, and it was super exciting. And after about a year, I sort of thought to myself, well, all the excitement and creativity seems to be coming from the agency side. And I talked to my account director at the time and said, "Hey, how do I go and work for you guys?" And he sort of hesitated for a second. He's like, "Well, Saren, you can't just come from the client side and come to something like an AKQA. Like, we're the major leagues. You need to go to the minor leagues and play a couple seasons and get your reps in, and then we'll call you up." And
Yeah.
I took that advice really seriously. I went to a small agency in Los Angeles for 3 years, and then he was good on his word. He called me up, brought me up to San Francisco, and I got to work on all those great brands with a lot of really great people at AKQA for 4 years.
Oh, wow.
And that was really the start.
Yeah, that's very interesting because usually when people say, "Oh, we'll call you up," that's something they never usually follow through. So, what was the shift though? So, from that journey, what was the shift that really got you into the whole AI space?
Well, AKQA has always been known to be the innovators. And so we were always trying to find what was next. And back in the early aughts, it was Facebook, and then it was the Apple App Store. And so I was very excited about, trying to figure it all out, social media and then mobile. And I would always be pursuing like what was something that I thought was going to be big a year from now or 2 years from now. I bounced around to a couple of different agencies. I got a lot of really good, diverse experience on the front end and UX, and then the back end on big applications. And I got a call one day from Cylance, which was a SaaS company in the cybersecurity space, and they were most famous for being the first AI model applied to cybersecurity. And they were local here in Irvine, California. I applied to be sort of their digital lead and take over their website, and they also really wanted to be at the forefront of things. So it was coming in, learning about AI from like behind the scenes, and trying to bolster their brand by applying AI in the outgoing marketing.
Yeah.
At the time, rebuilt the website with some AI light features, the
Mhm.
ability to chat with the website and navigate. The more I learned about it and the more I was associated with it, the more I was interested, and I just kept following along and following along and following along. And so by the time ChatGPT comes out a couple years ago, like I was kind of already prepped as to like how powerful it could be, and then just started signing up for all the accounts and trying it out. And that's basically what I've been doing for the last couple of years.
Yeah. So a lot of people right now, when it comes to talking about AI, there are multiple schools of thought, right? There are people who are extremely scared that they're going to be replaced, and there are people who are like, it's not about AI replacing you, it's about you working with AI. In terms of your experience, how do you navigate that? You've seen basically AI evolve from the very beginning. How do you
Mm.
navigate that when it comes to when you're talking to people who are just very hesitant to embrace AI or even know AI in the first place?
Well, in an attention economy, everyone's sort of trying to fight for eyeballs, ears. And a really effective way to do that is to sort of instill some fear in you. AI, as powerful as it is, as exciting as I think it is, it's overhyped. So I think those who are trying to sort of forward the category or gain tremendous investment in their companies will sort of speak about things as if they are going to be this giant super successful, all powerful technology. I don't think that that is, in fact, the truth. It's going to be a little bit more incremental. There'll be an opposing side that is always going to be using it for the equivalent amount of good as the bad actors are. Don't believe the hype. Really think about the practical. And I think the more you use it, the more you'll see that there's just a certain point where it can't pass humans.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a scenario where humans aren't still central to teaching it, training it, using it, and it's simply not really possible in the next 5 years for it to sort of really replace us. It will replace a lot of the work, maybe it'll take away a lot of the boring, repetitive stuff. It's excellent for a lot of the things that we would probably rather not do. But if and that's another thing about liberal arts is that if the more broad you can study and the more diversity of things that you can learn, the better you are to sort of adapt to how things unfold.
Yeah, that's a very nice perspective in putting that. And right now you are building something that's related to AI as well in your current company right now. How is it different, and what is it that you're really trying to bridge in the market? What problem are you solving in the market right now?
Well, the company that I work for currently is called Wethos AI.
Mm-hmm.
And we like to describe ourselves as sort of the anti-assessment assessment. A lot of companies will use assessment tests to sort of get an appreciation for the traits and character of their employees. Some of them have been around for a while, like DISC. A lot of people have taken DISC at work, and it kind of categorizes you into a style, and it tells managers like there's certain ways that you learn best, or there's certain communication styles you use. Those tend to be very one-off, like you only take it during review season, or you take it when you join the company, and it goes in a drawer and it doesn't really evolve. Wethos is using AI as more of a daily companion that you would log into at work. It's a chat that's been sort of customized specifically for you, and you fed it the documents that are most relevant to your work life, and it becomes a mentor. It's a little bit better than a coach. It has a sense of your calendar. It has a sense of your communication style. You can feed it transcripts of meetings, and it'll give you insights into, well, this person seems to be more of a visual learner. If you could sort of present your recommendations in graph form, like that's something that they understand a lot faster. Or if you're a manager and you have a conflict amongst, some of your employees, you can sort of ask the AI, how do I best handle this situation? And it'll give you some guidance in that way.
Mm-hmm.
That's the SaaS platform of Wethos AI. Now, there are a number of members of that team who are from Cylance. So they've been in the AI world for a while. And So they're true believers. And then on the marketing side, I'm sort of empowered to sort of use as much AI as I can to try to be as productive as possible with a small, a very small team. So that a lot of it is just playing with a lot of tools, finding out what each of them do best, and then leveraging them in the day-to-day of the marketing side of things for, a very small team to act like a much larger team, which is attractive for all sorts of small startups.
Yeah. And what do you think are the biggest mistakes that SaaS companies make when it comes to like entering the world of AI? So, well, you mentioned a lot about practicality, like take something that you can apply that's more practical for you. So, from your perspective of who has been using it for years, what do you think are the biggest mistakes that they are committing right now in terms of AI?
At the beginning, it will tend to get viewed as something of a transaction. Like I have a question, I will ask the AI and they will give me an answer. And sometimes that's just as simple as writing an email. I want to write an email, help me do that. The way in which it's evolving, 2025, they say, is sort of like the year of the agent, where it can take your direction and go do things for you. The mistake is to not use it in a little bit more of a relationship model, where you're using the tool, you're training the tool for you personally or your business specifically with what's called a RAG. RAG is basically it's like you can set up a folder, you can feed it all of your company's documents, and then it uses those documents in the responses back to you. And it's something akin to like a library. That everything is in context of your company now. You could do the same thing as an individual. So it starts to write with your voice. It's now that nowadays it has a lot more memory. ChatGPT, I think within the
Mm-hmm.
last week, sort of announced that they are storing these factual memories about you and then using that in their response. It becomes a lot more like a personal assistant that you have a relationship with and you work together on things. And it's much less transactional, like I'm just like an ATM machine.
Yeah.
I think you have to give it a little bit of a personality. You have to treat it a little bit more like a personal assistant that's there all the time and interact with it in a little bit more friendly way than trying to get something out of it all the time.
Yeah, and then not just one transaction, or at least, it's like as you said, not just treat it as a transactional thing. One of the things
Mm.
that I was actually talking about this the other day to one some of my friends and some of our audience as well, because we run an advertising agency, and in advertising, my belief is very simple. Advertising is simply an amplifier. So if a funnel is broken, if an offer is broken, advertising will simply amplify what's already broken. And in the same
Mhm.
sense, I believe, and feel free to like, I would love your input on this. AI is simply an amplifier, really. So whatever input you put in, the quality of input you put in is the quality of output that you get out. And from what I understand, that's really what you're saying about all of these things. It's like the RAG is a folder that you feed AI in, so you get to build a relationship around it. So you get to
Mhm.
have an output that you want to have later down the line. That am I perceiving it correctly?
No, you are. The agents can work, 20 at a time. If you set it upon doing social posts, it can post 20 times a minute as opposed to a human who does things kind of more one by one. It's also an accelerant. So it makes a lot of the little things that you do that are sort of time consuming happen a lot faster. Like in the
Mm-hmm.
world of SaaS, the one that I think is a really good case study is that when you're going for leads, it's a value exchange. Like the company needs to provide some value in exchange for your contact information because you want to follow up with them and talk about your product. AI will make the creation of sort of white papers that are sort of deeper research with like academic level information. That process has been cut down considerably. We used to take me and a couple other people a couple weeks to sort of get it right. And nowadays it could be done sort of in a day. And you still get the same sort of value and reference to a lot of academic material without, spending so much time trying to track down the different material and synthesizing all the data. Like that sort of stuff is presented to you much more quickly. So you can get value out of it a lot faster.
Yeah, we actually use AI a lot in our business. And I can't imagine how we came up with this all from our brains before, and all from pure research that AI can spew out in the next 5 minutes. And sometimes it's even better than what we originally thought about. Like in marketing, I figured that the trend of marketing will not really be really going for like the usual marketing style that we're doing, but it's more of like we're going to be the people who will be engineering these bots, these AIs, this all of these automation tools, instead of like looking at from it from the perspective of we're going to it has to come from all of us. So
Yeah.
or all of it has to come from us. So you mentioned something about like an accelerant. Like AI is really an accelerant. I have a SaaS company, let's say, who is just starting to build myself or the company from scratch. What are the top things that you would recommend that they start with when it comes to dealing with AI or just dipping their toes in AI?
The three that I would say are sort of the first things to start with are the RAG. You do want to customize one of the LLMs to be trained on your specific data. And you can feed it everything, the sales deck, your ICPs, the social media content from all your competitors, things like that. That's number one. Number two is you do want to get to the point where you can generate content using AI. And the RAG helps with that because it now knows a lot more about you, your industry, your category. And any research it does or any content that it produces is all within the context of you and your company. The third is using it more agentically as like a lead generations. You can feed it a list of contacts and it will go out and do the research about those contacts. And it will find their LinkedIn. It will sort of just find their blog. It will find their social channels and sort of be able to sort of summarize it all into something that you can read quickly prior to a cold call. The other thing is that you can automate follow up. And so anyone who comes to your website fills out a form, you can automatically sort of go do that research and then follow up with messages. The key, though, is that it is more about human beings than AI, right? So we're not my company is not the only one who does that. In our category, everyone will be doing that. So you need to stand out by infusing that humanity and authenticity into what you do. Like it's not just all emails are written by AI. It needs to be trained with specifics of your SaaS product and your particular voice. And then you need to give it human interaction to sort of bring out the details that tell the recipient, oh, this is maybe automated, but there's a human being here, and that's the person who I'm going to be, taking a demo from. Always be infusing the humanity in all of these things.
So let's dive deeper into that. How do you do that? How do you infuse humanity with AI? Are there specific steps that you do apart from creating all of this brand voice? How do you make sure that it's still human led approach rather than machine? Because sometimes people confuse it, that they confuse the tools as the one that should be leading, but in fact it's actually the human that should lead and the tools has to assist and amplify all of these things. So how do you approach that for you?
So the more personal detail you infuse into the relationship, I think the better. Also, use it as a tool amongst humans. So each of the humans on your team, maybe nowadays there'll be fewer of them, but if each of them are using AI, you can still go and collaborate with a true copywriter who can help customize the brand voice document. On the agency side, we would create brand voice documents for copywriters, and it's a copywriter still would be the best place to go to get a brand voice document to start all of the subsequent production level writing that will have to go on. So I would still want to collaborate with a professional copywriter to get the document to train the AI on, because AI is evolving quickly, but OpenAI will say that there's like basically 5 levels. That we start with chatbots, we move on to sort of more logical reasoning tools. Currently, we're in the phase where we're agentic, so think they will be able to go and do tasks. Where we have not yet gone, and we don't really know how long it's going to take to get there, is for the AI to become innovated in and of itself. It doesn't necessarily have brand new ideas. It only knows what it's been trained on, and it hasn't made that leap to putting new connections together. Therefore, the human being needs to be the brain that can put these unusual connections together.
Yeah. So for people who are starting out and using AI, because it's surprising to me as to how many people and companies still don't use it, actually. So for them who are starting out, do you have any resources that you can recommend where they can start from scratch? Because, or maybe it's talking to the AI itself. So what are the starting steps that you would recommend from someone from ground zero to where they want to go in like and use AI in assisting them? to do that?
So at the beginning, don't think of it as much as a tool, like a
Mm.
transactional tool that you're going to get something out of immediately. Think of it as a relationship that you're building with an entity that has memory now. So, number one, it's good to sort of figure out which of the tools you want, just because they have different things that they're really good at. But of the ones that we've all heard of, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, or Copilot, Claude's probably the best at being creative, but then you can talk to it in a way that's a lot more humane and it will respond in a way that's a lot more creative. ChatGPT is really good at a lot of the sort of technical stuff, but I think if you start on the notion that you're sort of training a personal assistant, now that they all have sort of this new memory system where it's just kind of remembering the facts about you. It was a lot harder, even as last month, to sort of build a relationship based on previous knowledge. Now it's at minimum in ChatGPT, it will retain that knowledge of you over time and then allow you to build out a relationship that you can sort of use and learn how best to unfurl down the road.
Yeah.
And the RAG thing is important because it's just a head start in that you can teach it a lot more about yourself a lot quicker.
Yeah, that's actually what we do in our agency, like the growth partner agency that we have. Just like what you said, still work with copywriters to create this brand voice and all of those things. So we work with our brand strategists to create all of those documents needed so that we have a specific voice that we're using. It's interesting that you mentioned that Claude is more into like the human approach when it comes to content, because that's also what we've figured out to be true. And ChatGPT is
Mm.
more of when you're brainstorming, but it's also easier when it comes to the user interface as well. It's easier to share across teams. So when leading teams, let's say, what is your approach when you're using AI as a driver in almost anything that you do?
So it starts with sort of letting them experiment. A lot of it's creating a safe space, and a lot of the worry is that this is not a safe space. And so, as a manager of people who are going to be using AI, I have to sort of make sure that they are aware that this is, in fact, a safe space. And there's settings you can do, or there's permissions you can give to ensure that. And then you let them experiment, which is the same way everyone would learn. It's similar to being the teacher in a classroom. You need to stay enough ahead of them that you can sort of recommend where next to go. And I just love playing with all the tools. So I generally can give decent advice about, oh, have you tried this one? Napkin. Napkin is a specialist in creating infographics. And when you get a tool that just does something a little on the magic side, like people get excited and then they want more. So it's a little harder for me to sort of stay ahead of all of it. But if I can recommend, just like books, like what's the next thing you should try, it tends to be a little bit more step by step growth. Right? They say that AI is a decent coach, but if you look somebody in the eye and they'll probably give you a little bit more sense of what they're afraid of. And then you can, as a
Yes.
human being, recommend things that are a smaller step than AI, because AI can't read a room to
Mhm.
save its life, right?
Yeah.
Um,
There's still the human, like the human aspect, the verbal, non-verbal things that AI cannot yet. And yeah, not yet, but it probably will evolve into that later on down the line. So yeah, that's very interesting. So right now your position is fractional head of an AI company, like Ethos AI. So basically you still need to balance the whole AI thing, not only like the use of AI in your own personal and professional work, in
mhm.
leading teams and so on. How do you balance that in terms of producing results? Not just the practical aspect of it, but like in terms of generating results for the company. How do you use that?
Well, I mean, AI is good at a couple things, and you want to start with sort of the content generation because that allows you to produce testable executions at a higher volume. And, you know, in the same way that we've always sort of, that digital has always been really great at producing data, like AI is also incredibly good at analyzing data. So if you can produce at a higher volume and go out and test at a higher volume, you get a lot bigger amounts of data back. Then you can use AI to sort of synthesize or find the patterns. Like that allows an agency to do 20 campaigns where they would only have done three, right? And stick to the model of like fail fast. Right, you can run these like a LinkedIn advertising campaign for 3 weeks and you keep it at a fairly minimum spend, but then you can start pretty quickly like eliminating the ones that aren't working. And I think at the end, if you've tested 20 to get to one, you're in a lot better position than if you tested three to get to one, because it probably would have taken you like four times as long. So that's using it for results. There are occasions when it will come up with patterns that you cannot just simply couldn't have seen, right? So in the development of an ICP, if the client has booked 100 deals, sometimes it's not easy to see like what industry do they sort of fit in. If it's all over the map, like it's you don't necessarily see where the pattern is. AI will help you a lot with. It seems like all of the titles across all these various industry are at the director level. You've been going out trying to look for the C level, whereas in fact, most of the people who take the demo are directors and then they become the advocates as opposed to a C level finding out about it and dictating that the team take a look at it. Right. And so it's much more productive because it's so good at pattern recognition. It shortens the amount of time it takes to get to those insights. And then that increases your productivity right there.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So for a SaaS company, let's say, who either are just building out or scaling, let's segment it. So because building and scaling are two completely different perspectives.
Mhm.
When you come in a company, let's say, beyond just AI, what do you tend to take a look at? What are the top three things that you tend to take a look at that moves the lowest hanging fruit or the biggest levers that would move the needle forward?
I mean, marketing does have a formula in terms of like the audits that you would do of all the channels, of all the resources, of all the messages. And, an experienced person as a human can really get pull insights out of it, but it's hard to collect. It is a little bit hard to synthesize. And AI does make all of that a lot easier. But I will go back to the notion that like human beings are deeply involved and they're essential in all of this. As you start, just getting a sense of who's on the team and what they're not only what they're experienced in and what they're good at, but what they're interested in. And if you find that thing that and this is true if you're developing content, if the founder is a specialist in this technical field, however, he has an interest in this adjacent, leisure activity, like that is interesting knowledge to sort of feed into a pattern recognition like AI and like how does skiing relate to productivity? And sometimes it's just linguistic. It's a nice, easy way to find how to create a metaphor for a technical product that's not easy to explain. Or it's a way to sort of get yourself in with the C level to get him or her hooked onto a subject that they can write about, right?
Yeah.
Now, as much as AI is sort of proliferating everywhere, I think one of the better techniques that a new company can do is showing their humanity to the world. So on TikTok, I do track a number of founders who are obviously talking about their product and sort of doing the sales thing, but to the extent that they are human beings with these interests and they've just, they're speaking about their technology through a skiing metaphor, revealing their face in 1 minute, like if you can talk them into doing that like once a day, that's incredibly good content. Human beings want to
Yeah.
see the behind the scenes, the human beings involved in the project, but at the same time, it's a branding exercise, and they're always going to remember the name of the product because they're so
Yeah.
engaged with the content, right? So at the beginning,
Yeah.
it's just find out about the humans, find out what they're interested in and their passions, irregardless of what it has to do with the product, and then let AI help you sort of craft the story that combines that all together.
That's actually a very creative approach. We might start doing that. We might start doing that which leads me to my next question, actually, which is like you've been in the creative space, in the marketing space, in the technical side of things as well. So how you phrased the strategy behind it, which is like understanding all of this like data, all of this like human interests and so on, and merging it with how you're going to present yourself. And social media platforms, we serve a lot of SaaS companies. One of the things that we see that's missing is that there is no human face in most SaaS companies. That's why we're doing this podcast. So what you mentioned right there, which is the founder is talking about the skiing, if that's the interest of their audience, let's say, and comparing it to metaphor. How do you think people can apply that more of what you just said? Should the founder be the one who lead that initiative, or does the whole team need to be involved in terms of humanizing that segment of your company or like the human aspect of the company?
So, because it's so powerful, it's going to become more and more widespread that companies are using AI avatars as their
Mm,
spokespeople, right? And what people always talk about is like, how can you tell, right? And at some point, it's going to be that you can't tell. Now,
mm,
that but that also means that everyone's going to try to do it, and then at some point it's there's going to be some human beings are just too intuitive to be able to say like I can't really tell. Like there's just going to be some sense that this is just not quite as satisfying because things will be too perfect, or it's just like a little bit uncanny. So it's good to find where the actual human being has passion that's even as an adjacent to the core of whatever the software is, which is, it's like car racing or skiing or photography, whatever it is. If you can draw that out, it tends to not adapt so well to trying to be perfect, right?
Yeah.
It's more passion and fun. Like you fall down, you're not trying to be perfect in skiing. You want to challenge yourself and do stuff that you end up falling down. A recording of a human being falling down is not like something we would make a judgment on. Like that's just natural human being. So to the extent that you can sort of put that like mistake laden, not perfect, rough around the edges, unkempt sort of version of people, that's what's going to be attractive to us consumers because it's going to feel much more authentic.
Yeah.
And they're just going to we'll make a distinction between the authentic person and people and message versus the clean, more perfect, AI generated stuff. And the more you see of AI, the more you're going to be attracted to the authentic.
Yeah.
So just ask the questions that are around the border of the person or the resource or the idea, and try to get to something a little bit more unusual, a little bit less perfect.
You mentioned about like being not perfect, making mistakes, but there's not just bits in general that seems to ride the trend without really thinking about if it's brand aligned, if it stays
Mhm.
true to the core of the brand. So how do you make sure that the things that you're doing, like the human approach of it, is still brand aligned? With or without AI, like what's your general perspective about that since you've done a lot of work in that area?
Yeah, yes. I've worked with a lot of creative directors whose job it is to be the police for the brand. Uh, I mean, the good news is that AI in a RAG system, you're the trainer, but they
Yeah.
will follow the rules. So you put your brand guidelines into the RAG, and it will follow them. So you don't have to be
Mhm.
so annoying. You consistency is important, right? That's the goal of the brand guidelines. So you can be a little loose in it in the service of being more authentic and making more mistakes. But I think it's just essentially advice. Like we do still need to be consistent because people it takes 11 touches these days to get them to fill out a demo form. And they want to be able to see that each 11 touches is from the same brand. Else they sort of keep their mind open to other alternatives, right? That's just a principle. I mean, in sports, you want to practice form as well as possible. There are plenty of basketball shooters who have weird form who still make the shot. That's fine. But for the most part, the brand is just there to make you practice correctly. And then in a game, it's results are what actually matters.
Yeah.
So I think it's just vigilance. But to be authentic, maybe you loosen those strings a little bit and let them go a little bit off brand just to see what happens.
Yeah, one of my personal beliefs has always been just test it and let the data tell you the truth. So, yeah, so in terms of marketing, let's say I'm going to pretend I'm a SaaS company or I have a SaaS company. There
Mhm.
are sometimes it's so overwhelming as to where you even start with your whole marketing because AI can solve the whole SEO game, AI can solve the whole LinkedIn game, it can solve practically almost any area that you want it to solve, or at least 80% of it can be the AI can create the skeleton of what you're building. Where would you suggest me as a founder of a SaaS company to really focus on if there are only top three things that I need to pay attention to when it comes to targeting my market, my right audience, and so on? Where should I focus most of my attention to with the first top three pillars?
In terms of research, I don't know that you would change from the way we've been doing it for 10 or 15 years. I think the research is shortened because at least 70% of it could be done by AI. So an individual founder, as they're sort of getting their original ideas down on paper, can do more research and to try to find what their real target market will be. And hey, this is my idea. What do you think is the target market? Is not a bad place to start with an LLM. And actually Gemini is really good at this because it is Google, and so it has a lot more data that a lot of these other ones do not. But 15 years ago, it was a team of three and it would take 3 weeks and you would get a deck and that was it. Like now it's more, the test and learn is accelerated. Like when you get to the point where you feel really confident that you found it, then yes, you should involve some humans to do deeper insights into the actual language of the messaging or the, which live events you would be going to, those sort of things. Like I think data only goes so far. There's intuition still value, but at the beginning, I would start with the basics. Like, what is my target market? What are the components of the category? Who are my competitors? An agent will be able to go out and research all of this, like, in 45 minutes. Then you still want to do ICP, like a ideal customer profile. Like that is shortened, but it's still incredibly important. And all of this will be to get to the final versions of these documents to take to the RAG. And then it's the rules that you follow ongoing. Nothing. The other thing is that you can conduct customer research in the sort of normal way. Like if you can get them on a Zoom and have a conversation for half an hour about the product. Nowadays, or before, you would have to sort of transcribe or you'd have to take notes. Now you just feed the entire thing and the AI will find patterns. It would be awesome to start at a company or start at a new job, have 30 of these interviews and then put them all into a system and like look for the patterns like that. Don't skip that. Don't skip the consumer research. That's where all the real insights are. But use AI just to make it a lot faster, a lot easier. And likely it'll come up with stuff that you can say, I never thought of that.
Yeah, yeah, that's also one of the things that we've always found to be true. It's I always joke to people, not even, and this is not even a joke. It's like, for example, it's like one sarin, 10 sarins. That's how I convince people in how to use AI. I have a branding strategist. Her name is Saki. I was like, one Saki, 10 Sakis. So that's basically how I convince them to make them realize it's not really even, it's like what you said, it's not gonna replace us probably in the next 5 to 10 years from now. We're still in the infancy stage. But it's kind of like an extension of us, but we have to build a relationship around it.
Yeah. The first thing to think about as an individual is that you have a core set of skills. So you're like a circle and everything is there for your job. This is my core. There are things that you're a little bit good at that are an adjacent. And what AI is really good is bringing that out. Like I went to school for X, Y, and Z. I've been doing this job for 10 years. Like I'm really good at the core, but I also like UX and I've dabbled in it. Like you can go to an AI and enhance your skills as an AI voice in the room. And if you put together a couple more of those, you've really broadened your effect. So I think people should think of the not necessarily AI as replacing you. I think it sort of elevates you to sit above a team of your own. So then now you have your core, which is you, but then you have a team of AI agents underneath you who are doing these adjacent things that you're interested in, but not necessarily as experienced in. So you'll have your own UX bot, you'll have your own copywriter bot, and your own data analyst bot, and they're custom to you, and they do it for you, and it's part of your very small circle at work. But it does make you a lot more effective, right? And it,
Yeah.
it, it draws out individual components and specializes in them, and you can still do what you do, but you've just got this little bot team that works for you that makes your life a lot easier.
That's one of the best ways if I've heard it being put that way. Actually, I'm probably gonna copy that from you. But as a core and really use great different versions of you of things that are outside of your core skill sets. So, where do you see AI in 2 years, 3 years from now, and how it plays in the whole marketing SaaS space?
The way in which OpenAI says it's going to unfold is that we're in the agent era. We'll move to the innovative era where it's becoming more, it's able to sort of come up with new ideas. So for the medical field, that's excellent. For cybersecurity, that'll be good. For things that are fighting bad things, we want innovation. What comes after that, they say, is more like an AI can do the work of an entire organization. Like it's not just a team anymore, it's like the whole thing. I think that's a little optimistic, but if that is possible for us, then I can have a good idea, in the shower and come out and have an AI organization, like make it a reality. The pessimistic view is that's going to lead to a lot of junk, but in a test and learn world, like 100 ideas go out there. If somebody just has a really unusual idea, now they're enabled to go and make it happen, and it'll show up on the App Store whereas it would never have even seen the light of day before. So the optimistic view is some of these weird ideas will always will pop up and take off, and it'll be enjoyable for us, where it would not have been possible, like a year ago.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I would, in terms of looking in the future, is like try to stay optimistic and always remember human beings are still the most important thing. It's our ability to use it and control it and limit our, what we expect out of it. But it's not inherently evil. Like evil people can do bad things, but if there's more of us good people, we can invent things to prevent the bad things from happening. Like there's still an optimistic view of the future.
Yeah, I believe so too. And I so to believe in the two worlds of the future, but I try to lean in into the optimistic view of the future.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what about you? What is a vision that you have? What's next for you? What's something that excites you right now in what you're building?
I mean, I do like the fact that it takes away a lot of the sort of repetitive, sort of easier tasks, not just from me, but team people on the team. I liked the idea that it can let them give them some extra space to think more creatively. I can't stop tinkering, so I would like to see some of my weird ideas like come to light easier than it would have been for, I haven't done it yet because I don't know how to code or I don't, it's like there's a lot of stuff I can't really get in my brain. But I feel it feels like an outlet for creativity can be unleashed, right? And I
Yeah,
want to experiment with that and see if some of these weird ideas can become apps or a short story or a song, right? Like it just would
yeah,
be fun to have it take these little nuggets of things that I was a little bit good at and like make it seem much more professional. So
yeah.
I think it's really good for everyone to just start, experiment, and see if it can produce something halfway decent and inspire you to keep going and keep learning.
Yeah. Well, Saren, thank you so much. This interview, I wish we have way more than 1 hour, really. And I wish we could expand even further more than AI because here we are talking mainly about AI, but you have such a wealth of experience beyond AI. What is something that you have, let's say, in your wealth of experience, not just with AI or beyond? What is something that we did not even tackled or discussed so far that you have in mind that you just want to share for somebody who's involved in SaaS or somebody who's involved in building a company?
That's a very good question. One of the things I did with AI early on was sort of put all the PDFs I'd collected over the years. In looking back on it, I've been collecting them for a long time. And most of the times we dismiss reports that are older than a couple years old because we're like, well, that was a whole different era. But there are a couple that still stand out, like even 10 or 12 years later. And one of them was by Forrester, and it was about user experience. And I could look it up, but essentially what it was saying is that multimedia is the best way to learn. So so even if you're a marketer and you're putting out messages, you have multiple touch points that you have to hit. The brand guidelines are to be enforced across multiple channels, multiple times of day, multiple platforms, via video, via image, via tweet. And there are some principles that I think are really important for people to understand about brand that I think are just sort of locked in as the way human beings take in information, process their decision making, and then adapt to SaaS products or innovations like AI. And a lot of it is just going outside the box and being as creative as you can about utilizing as many different formats against the original brand guidelines and just trying something unusual. AI tends to just reproduce stuff that it's already happened. So before we get to the age where it's inventing stuff that is net new, this innovation phase, all of us should sort of go back to the fundamentals of humanity and say humans have five senses. We should try to target our message to each of them. Human beings live on a 24-hour day. We should try to find versions of that are appropriate for 6 a.m., for noon, for 9 p.m., right? And it's like the creativity of finding those subtle little things to experiment with, I think is a lot more fun for us. And AI will make the boring stuff easier, but like let's try to always be exercising our creative brain against sort of these fundamental notions. And that's what I think a lot of people get into marketing in the first place. It's like they react to a creative idea with an aha moment and they're like, I like that, right? That is an insight about a sports company that really moves me. Like, let's get more of that.
Yeah.
So experiment, try to be weird, try to be unusual, try to be unique, and produce as many aha moments as you possibly can.
Yeah. All right. So thank you so much. So we're just gonna move on into the last part of this interview, which is a rapid fire question. So just try
Mhm.
to answer it as quickly as possible. The first thing that comes into your mind. So first question is, what is the current experiment that you're most excited doing?
I've been really trying to figure out how to write a white paper without being an academic in that field and being respectful. But I have like a formula and it involves like four different tools, and I'm trying to optimize each little one. Essentially, I get a ChatGPT to write the brief for Perplexity. Perplexity does the research and provides all the PDFs. I take the PDFs to Claude. I make a project with all those PDFs and then ask it to write the question. And I think even if you just followed that, it gives you something that's really good. And like it's not human, but it's like it's so much information that's been condensed for you about a specific topic. I went to bed last night trying to figure out how to do this one thing a little bit better. And I did wake up this morning and like tried it out. Every 2 or 3 weeks there's something like that. That is why I think AI is kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, second question, what's an AI tool? If there's just one thing, what's your most favorite?
Let's see. Sometimes it's like one little element within it. I think ChatGPT, if you're on the pro version, you can do custom GPTs. And if you can get, as a early stage marketer, early in your career, if you could just master that one little thing, and it's a little bit like a rag, but it's also like it'll be your little bot, your little assistant bot. That's a really good thing. And I make them for each individual client or sometimes even individual projects to make all of these AIs are sort of can do anything, anything. Like this is where you say, I want you to do this very specific thing. And I think that's one of the, I think, first things to learn. There is a tool called, it's the URL is getpoly .co, I think. And it's a visual way to create a rag. And so it's like a big whiteboard and you can put up your videos and it'll show little clips of your videos. You can put up text files, you can put up PDFs, but it's shown on a visual, like a big whiteboard. And then all the lines go into the chat and the chat will reference the things and the thing. And whereas a custom GPT, it's all a lot of it's text. Like there are plenty of visual learners in the world, and so that Get Poly is a really good version of a visual introduction into the tool. The other one I mentioned recently was Napkin. That is really cool. You put in some data, you ask it for a visualization. It gives you 10 options and you can customize it. If you're in an agency and you have to do a deck, that is a lifesaver because it'll turn something you can't quite figure out what it looks like into 10 options you can definitely choose from.
Yeah. Well, I've noted all of those things. I'll try all of them. Well, I'm so glad. I love the way your eyes just light up when, when talking about all of these tools. So, last one is, what is one thing we've talked about a lot of things AI, but if there is only one thing that people can remember from this conversation, what is the one thing that you want them to take away from this conversation that they can apply in their business and create massive results?
I think expertise on a single subject is sort of what's going to fade. That is what's going to get you replaced, is if you go too deeply into one thing for too long. So my one takeaway would be go as broad as you can, for as long as you can. Learn as much as you can about as wide a variety of subjects, pick and choose, test and learn. This is the liberal arts way, right? It'll encourage cognitive diversity, which is another thing that at work at Wethos AI, we're big advocates for cognitive diversity. Like the more diverse the team, the more crazy the ideas can become. So train yourself to be as cognitively diverse as possible because that's where you're going to get your best ideas.
Thank you for all of the insights in AI and everything beyond AI. So before we wrap up, is there anything you want to promote, give a shout out to what you're building? Where can people find you?
I love the name Saren because it's kind of unusual. If you do a search for Saren Sakurai, you'll find me somewhere. I guess my Saren.ai is where I would sort of go easily. I really like Blue Sky. So Saren at Blue Sky. I am a functional marketing head, but I just really do like giving advice and being helpful. Even if it's a 30-minute like conversation, I generally can come up with some interesting things to talk about. And I want to learn as much as I give. So let's just have a conversation. I can help you, or I'd love to learn from you. Let's just have a conversation.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. We will be also including all of the links and where you can find Saren online and how you can reach out to him. So, Saren, this is such a very visionary, intentional, and very deep conversation. I hope we can probably invite you sometime soon to talk even beyond AI, all of your creative backgrounds and so on. So thank you for spending the time with us. And to those who are listening to us, who are SaaS founders, who are just starting out, just take this conversation, tidbits out of it. And sometimes it's not really absorbing every knowledge. It's about getting that one thing that will make all the difference in your business. So if you're tuning in, make sure to just keep on re-listening to the conversations that you probably find difficult to absorb, because in the second look of it you'll actually get more than what you first discovered. So thank you, Saren, for joining us, and
Thank you very
we'll
much.
see you. And for SaaS founders, marketers, and growth leaders, just keep on building, and we'll see you in the next episode.